in a row.
Oh, what's up, man?
Hey guys, we're live here. Jeremy Kahn alongside Nick Wilcox and Sean Hoy. It is Roto Grinders daily football podcast. I should say weekly football podcast. We do it every Friday right around 11 a.m. So thank you for joining us. I'm live from my son's bedroom as they're still doing work on my house. So you can see his Eagles sign in the background. I'm not an Eagles fan, especially after last night because I like the Panthers. But anyway, let's get into this slate because things are pretty interesting this week, at least in my opinion. I was looking at different things as far as quarterbacks go and roster construction. I play a lot of cash, full disclosure. I play FanDuel pretty much 95% of the time. And when I start looking at the quarterbacks, there are two that jump out to me right off the bat. And I'll get into that in just a second. But let's go over the high price guys first. Tom Brady, we know what he's capable of. He's going up against the Jets. You got Aaron Rodgers. I actually don't like the spot he's in this week, but it's tough to say I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I think Minnesota's defense is going to give him fits personally, so we'll get your guys' take on that. Drew Brees, that's one of the guys that when you look at his numbers, they're absolutely ridiculous. Last year, off of a bye, I think he came out and threw for like 360 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Panthers. Over the past 5 years, he's thrown 17 touchdowns, I believe, off of a bye week. So his numbers are absolutely ridiculous, and I love the game flow possibly for that game with, if you're going to go ahead, we were talking about correlation and roster construction. Nick a little bit beforehand, and we're going to get into that. But, and then you start looking at Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan coming off a bye, and then I'll throw this one out there finally, Deshaun Watson. I think most people are going to have him in cash this week. But, my two favorites and what I'm trying to decide are Brees and Watson. Give me your thoughts on the upper echelon quarterbacks. And look, you can throw Cousins, Winston, Trevor Simeon's in that group as well because of matchups. Nick?
Oh, sorry.
There you are. That's all right.
This week, so higher echelon, Brady, talk about, I think Rodgers is actually in an okay spot. I mean, look, he's going to be going against one-on-one Xavier Rhodes against Jordy Nelson. Yes, we understand that, but Trey Waynes is not a great corner this year. He's been getting burned a lot. And I think that's somewhere Rodgers can definitely attack in Minnesota. I'm not going to consider him for probably cash games, but yeah, GPP. I mean, I think if you want to get Rodgers at a decently low rate, I think you grab Rodgers there. Cash games, for me, it's either Drew Brees or it's Deshaun Watson, of course. Drew Brees is going to be a little bit more higher, but he gets it's another one of those games where Brees could go off for 28, 30 points, and could be a pivot off of Watson, who will obviously be at home against the Cleveland Browns defense. But I think it could be also a nice pivot away from the Watson. So I kind of like those guys. And then for a couple of GPP QBs I like, Ben Roethlisberger against KC Chiefs. Yes, Ben Roethlisberger had a 5-interception game last week, but in a sense, he still has that high ceiling. And if he shows up, he's going to win you a GPP.
I can see that. I actually like Big Ben this week as well, and I'll probably throw some darts in a tournament. Give me your thoughts real quick, Sean, on the upper echelon quarterback.
I mean, the upper echelon ones I'm not too high on. I mean, I'm always the value quarterback guy. I mean, Rodgers, sure, Jordy Nelson will probably get shadowed. So, and actually with Deshaun Watson's ownership and a few other guys, you could get Rodgers at fairly low ownership and possibly stack him with like Devontae Adams and pretty big upside there. So we'll see how that goes. But basically the games I'm targeting is Stafford versus Brees and Deshaun Watson, believe it or not, against Hogan. I mean, I'm not like on Hogan, but I mean, he is only 4,600 and he's trying to like make a name for himself and make sure he stays in the league. So maybe he'll, get 15 fantasy points at 4K, or 4.6K or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the quarterbacks with the rushing ability, and he can run the ball. I mean, so can Deshaun Watson. So that game's super interesting.
Yeah. A couple other quarterbacks here to look at. I know a lot of people like the game flow for possibly Carson Palmer. Still waiting to find out what happens with Oakland and LA with the fires out there. If they move the game, I haven't seen anything official, but there's been a lot of talk. Sean and I were talking before we started. There was some talk about trying to move the game to Monday initially, but they can't because the Raiders play on Thursday night. So, there's a lot of issues with that game, but I think some people will be looking at Phillip Rivers as well as a guy he's burned me a couple times. I tell you the guy I do like, and I told you I'm not a big fan of Rodgers this week, and that's when you say you're not a big fan of him, it just means I think there are better options that are cheaper. I actually seen him in the spot he's in. I think Minnesota wins this game against Green Bay. That was a big win for Aaron Rodgers in Dallas. Typically, when you look at back-to-back road games and how teams will struggle, and Minnesota's defensive line, Green Bay the past couple weeks facing Chicago and Dallas, this is a totally different front seven than they're seeing in the other two games. So I don't think they're going to move at will, and I think Rodgers will be hit and will be pressured. But again, we'll find out next week if I was right on that to stay away from it. But I'm totally fine with a GPP dart trying to figure that out. But I do like Case Keenum, and I've seen a lot of people on Josh McCown figuring that the Patriots are going to jump out to a lead, and there's all the chance for junk points. I don't know that I'm in that camp, but I totally understand it. But I will be throwing some at Keenum. Any cheap guys for you, Nick?
Cheap guys, I like Josh McCown for sure. 6,900 I think on FanDuel. Full disclosure, I play FanDuel a lot more than I do DK. Josh McCown's on the radar for sure. Carson Palmer, he's going to throw the ball a lot. The Tampa Bay defense has proven that they're just not healthy right now, and I think it's a spot that people can think about attacking. And this could be a hunch, but Case Keenum, a couple weeks ago did look great against the Bucs as well, and I think he could do a great job against Green Bay defense in a matchup where I think we could expect a lot of points, especially if the Packers are, like you were thinking, that they could be playing from behind. I think Case Keenum could probably have a great deal in doing that. So those guys are lower tier on FanDuel. And if you're obviously thinking of like I said earlier, Ben Roethlisberger is a guy where he'll definitely be low owned, and people will take that 5-interception game too much to heart. In the KC defense, they're a defense that they're a great defense, but they do allow a lot of yardage.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, any other cheapies for you?
Yeah, I was talking about those two games that I liked, but the 49ers Redskins, correct? I didn't take any.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think Cousins and randomly Rivers is very playable, but Brian Hoyer, he's been doing well and kind of unexpected with the talent around him. But at low ownership, you could get a Hoyer stack in there.
Yeah, I could see that. Let's move over to running backs, and Sean, I'll stay with you. Real quick on what you were talking about. It's another one of those double-digit favorite games this week. Whereas if you think the game flow is going to go that way, and you're going to see, you got Denver, you've got Washington, you've got, there's a handful of teams out there that are. New England's another one that are big favorites. If the game flow goes that way, you have a chance for all those junk fantasy points at the end of the game when they're playing their prevent defense and they really don't care. We've seen it happen a ton of times. But running backs, I know a lot of people are going to be on Kareem Hunt this week, even though he's going up the other defense. Yep. Le'Veon Bell is also a good play. I like Leonard Fournette a lot. I think they're going to feed him the ball because Blake Bortles is a turd, and they're going to have to keep giving the ball. You have the Rams coming all the way from west to east, and I think they'll be able to run the ball efficiently. Interested in Melvin Gordon a little bit and trying to figure out what happens with the Packers running game. I know a lot of guys are going to go cheap here, looking at Jerick McKinnon against the Vikings, possibly looking at Alvin Kamara with the trade of Adrian Peterson. There's a lot of interesting names up top, but I do think there are some value picks at running back. Sean, give me your thoughts on maybe where you look at running back.
I'm a Kareem Hunt truther at this point. He's been a beast, but if you just look at the Steelers, before Dalvin Cook, that's a sad story, but Dalvin Cook absolutely lit up the Steelers, and then Leonard Fournette last week just torched them. He could be the third rookie running back in a row. Well, not a row, but like those young kids, that's on his mind. Like, he's like, I got to torch the Steelers. I mean, Jordan Howard and Cohen had pretty good game against them as well. So, I mean, I think Kareem Hunt is just my guy this week. Who else did I have? I mean, with Peterson gone, I mean, I know Peterson didn't get like much volume at all, but yeah, Kamara at 4,600, I believe, 4,500.
And Mark Ingram's cheap as well.
Yeah, Mark Ingram's there as well, but if you're playing full point PPR, I'd go Kamara. If not, then if half point like on FanDuel, I think Ingram as well. But who else did I have?
Yeah, you got some other interesting names. I know Ellington. Some people are high on him. We thought the Tampa Bay game would be, rather up and down the field. Devontae Freeman coming off the bye week against a Miami defense that hasn't really done anything up to this point. I mean, the whole team stunk up the joint. Todd Gurley against Jacksonville. Le'Veon Bell had a halfway decent fantasy game, nothing like major to show for as far as, touchdowns and punching in the end zone. But Todd Gurley, after last week, reaching out for the end zone, fumbling it into the pylon, and it turning out to be a touchback instead of the TD, really changed the outlook of that game. And I think some people are going to look at the volume that C.J. Anderson may get against a Giants team as well.
That's just going to say him.
I got 4 guys.
Go ahead.
I just remembered. Lamar Miller's volume this year has been somewhat disappointing. He's been consistently 15 to 20 carries, like 2 or 3 targets. But I mean, if you just look at game scripts and just how much Deshaun Watson should be opening them up, the Browns front 7, that is, Lamar Miller should have some room to work with there. So look at him with Watson and Hopkins probably being super highly owned. People might overlook Lamar Miller a little bit. And then Buck Allen, I think he's 5,400 on DraftKings. He's been getting 5 to 6 targets a game, and I mean his carries have fluctuated, and it's really confusing. Like, he had 2 carries one week, and last week he had 21 carries. But the game script is there against the Bears, so we'll see what happens there.
Nick, give me your thoughts on running back.
Thoughts on running back this week? Yeah, it's going to be, you're going to take either Hunt, Bell, or Fournette as your RB1. I think RB2 gets a little bit interesting. I think if you want to figure out those top 3, Todd Gurley is a guy. Jacksonville defense is no doubt a great pass defense because they have great pass rushers and they have great boundary corners. But when you're talking about the run game, they've allowed some guys to really gash them. The Tennessee Titans a few weeks back with Murray, the Jets with McGuire and Powell, and then literally Le'Veon Bell obviously, but these guys, we'll see what happens. I think Gurley is in a decent get right spot against this Jacksonville defense who will probably have to lean on Gurley more to run the ball in order for him to have some success. Another running back I like was C.J. Anderson against the Giants. The Broncos are, I think they're a 10 or 11-point favorite. So that's a perfect game script for a guy coming off a bye week. He's fresh. There might be some worry for some people, especially my season longs, about Jamal Charles, which I thought was going to be a hurt. But I think C.J. Anderson looks really good this year, and I think he's just going to be able to take this one all the way and just prove all his doubters wrong. And then some guys I'm thinking about in the mid-tier-ish for running back is, like, I like to say possibly like Mark Ingram, like we were just talking about, and then Alvin Kamara for the Saints, those guys as well. So I think those guys, all the guys I just said, kind of shape out well. And then, of course, one more, Marshawn Lynch. I mean, that's a huge GPP play for your RB2. I just think game script wise, especially if Derek Carr plays, goes a long way for Marshawn Lynch.
Sean, what'd you have?
What do you guys think about Amir Abdullah this week at like a little less than 5K?
I mean, I think if I'm playing Abdullah, I'm definitely constructing my roster to kind of stack that game up a little bit, because that might be one where I'm playing Breeze and maybe Michael Thomas or Ingram or something, or Kamara, and then having Amir Abdullah on the other side and just trying to load up at wide receiver. If I'm going to do that, I've got no problem playing Amir Abdullah I'm not a huge fan of his. It
Yeah.
seems like he's a boom or bust guy, but for GPPs, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I did want to throw two other guys out there. Chris Thompson, I'll be playing him in a few GPPs, and I know everybody's going to be down on Mike Gillislee, but this Jets New England game, it just feels like one where they're going to get down there and Gillislee's going to pop two in during the game. You know what I mean? Like not that they're using him a ton, but it just always seems that way because New England always beats the pants off of the Jets since Rex Ryan left, and even when he was there. They had some close matchups when they had that great defense, but they're not that team. The fact that the Jets are 3-2 is just it's an anomaly. It's ridiculous. So, all right.
I did say the Jets were going to beat the Browns last week, though. So
yeah, hey, but the Browns dominated that game. They screwed themselves with two missed field goals and going for it on 4th and goal instead of kicking the field goal, which would have tied.
No, that was the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
the AFC Championship game right there.
Those a-holes screwed me.
Definitely.
All right, let's go wide receiver here, and we'll start with you, Nick. Upper echelon guys. Antonio Brown's the highest priced guy, and he should be. I love Brown this week. I think it's a perfect spot for him, and I don't think Marcus Peters is going to be able to shadow him. I think they're going to move him around. In my cash lineups, I'm trying to find a way to fit him in. The other guy that I will be playing in GPPs, I don't know that I'm playing him in cash, is Julio Jones coming off the bye week. I think he's going to have a big week. We've all been waiting for him to get in the end zone and have that 170, 200-yard game. This could very well be it against a Miami team where the matchup's favorable. Maybe you're still concerned with the hip injury. Michael Thomas is in a great spot as well. I do think a lot of people are going to shy away from Mike Evans. That Patrick Peterson defense has been it's humbled a lot of guys, and we talked about Xavier Rhodes being on Jordy Nelson. So if you're looking for low ownership and you want to try to find a good receiver in a GPP, maybe you're going that route. Real quick, DeAndre Hopkins, a guy that I think a lot of people are going to target in cash and in tournaments and pair him with Deshaun Watson. Golden Tate's a guy that I really like. We were talking about game flow with the New Orleans-Detroit game because I think New Orleans is going to win that game handily. But I like Golden Tate a lot in this. Chris Hogan was at 7 games, 7 touchdowns. I think his last 7 games he's played. Tyreek Hill, an interesting matchup. And then check the injury report for Stephon Diggs because I like his matchup, especially with Case Keenum, if he's healthy. He hasn't been practicing, but he said he will play on Sunday. Nick, let's start with you with the top-notch guys. And there's a few other ones I didn't throw in there, but feel free to add them.
Okay, so top of echelon guys, I think you just got to lock in, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones if you find a way. I think this is the week Julio Jones breaks out, just because of they come out the bye. There's sometimes when teams come off the bye, there's some things that you see on tape where if we had just done this play instead of this play, you would have been open during this coverage. So I think that's going to happen this week. Atlanta gets Miami, so I just think it's just Julio Jones week, I think, and you just got to lock him in. I don't disagree with the Hopkins, but Jason McCourty has been a really good corner this week. He's been a top 5 corner in PFF due to corners for the season. So that's not going to probably stop me from using Hopkins, but for GPP for upside, who knows? Hopkins can still go out there and score 2 touchdowns, but I just think that's something to keep your eye on a little bit. Other guys that I do like, you got to say it, Chris Hogan. This guy's really been just getting touchdowns like crazy. And it just, if you find a way to play him, play him. Another guy I think coming off the bye, I think you could definitely play. And I think they got their game right. It's Terrell Pryor against the San Francisco 49ers. If the Redskins are going to win that game, and the point total right now is minus 12 and a half. So Pryor's going to have to at least catch a touchdown in that game, correct? So
Yep.
I think those guys as well. And then obviously Keenan Allen versus the Raiders. Right now, granted, we don't know the situation of how they're going to play, but if they do play, Keenan Allen for sure.
Sean, give me your thoughts on receivers.
Yeah, I'm on Hopkins as well. So you can basically tell my roster construction's Watson to Hopkins and then Kareem Hunt and then figure out the rest. But Hopkins, he's been getting like a little over 12 targets a game. That big playability is there. But if you want to go more contrarian, the targets haven't been there quite yet, but he is just now getting back into his groove as Will Fuller. But those 2 games that I've been talking about, Golden Tate, we all know in the slot He just always is catching balls, and the game script is there for him. I mean, that should just be a high point total game. But my big pick of the week is Marvin Jones for cheap with the upside that he has potentially. I mean, Marvin Jones is, he's tall, as Kenny Mayne would say on SportsCenter. But I also I know he's questionable right now. I mean, Diggs is questionable, but Adam Thielen, the game script is there for him as well. And, he's been getting – we all know the chemistry he has with Bradford, and even though Bradford might play, Diggs was the one that gets the had the touchdowns when Keenan was throwing to him. But, touchdowns are just kind of – especially for wide receivers, there's an element of randomness to them.
Yeah.
Even when Carr was healthy, you never knew who was going to get the touchdowns between Cooper and Crabtree. You just take the targets and then roll with the upside.
Well, that's the thing. If you like Palmer this week, try to figure out who he's throwing to. I know he loves Larry Fitzgerald, who I think is 3rd or 4th in targets, which he's an interesting play as well if you can fit him with your roster construction. Some other guys that I think really should get a look, Pierre Garçon. Especially if you think the 49ers are going to be behind, a little bit of a revenge spot, or if you want to go double revenge because he got even with the Colts last week and now it's the Redskins this week. That's interesting to me, and I think that's a guy that I'll be taking a look at. Also, a couple other names out there. Deshaun Jackson, I know I threw him out a couple weeks ago. I might target him in some GPPs, especially if Patrick Peterson is going to be shadowing Mike Evans. And maybe you look at the secondary receivers for Green Bay. I hate calling them secondary receivers because look, Rodgers, Cobb, Devontae Adams. We all think Jordy. Jordy's the most expensive. And another guy that I'm throwing him back out there. I was just telling Sean before we started. I scored 150 points, or whatever it was, 150 some, and I got nothing out of tight end last week. I had Evan Ingram in my cash lineup, and I had Devontae Parker like everybody else did, and I got 1.6 points from him. And I still scored 150 and won most of my lineups, or pretty much all of my lineups last week. But all of that aside, I think Devontae Parker, if healthy, GPP go right back at him because nobody's going to be on him because of the injuries.
Yeah.
Nick, thoughts? Any other guys? Sorry.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry. The targets are there, and the game script's going to be there for Jarvis Landry. And with him in the slot, I don't see a way with Parker or without Parker that not Terrence Newman, what am I talking about? Desmond Trufant covers him. I just see at least 8 to 10 receptions from Landry this week. And then, I take whoever you can find that has whoever Terrence Newman's covering for the Vikings, take them, whether it's Adams or Cobb.
I think other receiver notes I wanted to add was Willie Snead for the Saints. I think you can definitely stack him with Drew Brees. Snead was supposed to be, Snead, especially in season long, was supposed to be at least a 5th round, 6th round pick. And he ended up being more of a 9th, 10th round, 8th round pick because of the suspension. But him coming out of suspension, he was supposed to be playing in London, but didn't happen. I think he's a guy that he will possibly go underrated at 5,600 on FanDuel for his upside.
Yeah,
I love it.
Especially with Slay being on Michael Thomas, most likely, right?
Right, exactly. Snead would be playing the slot. And then a couple other guys that I did like on the lower end, what's his name? Martavis Bryant versus the KC Chiefs because Martavis Bryant needs to break out at some point. It's just been a couple of times where Ben Roethlisberger has just missed him, and I think that this is a spot where Bryant can get right here. Do justice for all season-long fans, basically. Another guy that's really, really cheap, and it could just be – it depends on what's going to happen with him, but Kenny Stills versus the Atlanta Falcons, especially if Parker is out, all it takes is one long bomb from Cutler to Stills, and you got value right there at 4,800.
All right, let's move on to tight end here real quick, unless you had something else to add, Sean.
No, I'm good.
All right. So tight end, we talked about Cleveland. Cleveland blitzes a ton, and the tight ends, the whole thing in the DFS industry has been playing it's been an ongoing joke playing quarterbacks against the Browns defense and playing tight ends as well. I know a lot of people are going to be on Ryan Griffin. I like Derby from the Broncos as well to possibly get a touchdown if you're looking to go cheap. There's a handful of other guys that you can check out. I mean, the high-priced guys will be there. If you want to go Gronk and differentiate your lineup. And the only reason I say that is I feel like people are more liable to pay up for wide receiver or running back than go tight end. Cameron Brate's in an interesting spot. Will Martellus Bennett finally get into the end zone? And another guy that I really like is Kyle Rudolph at 5,300 on FanDuel. I think I will have some exposure to him. Give me your thoughts on tight ends, Sean.
Yeah, there's just a few that I look at. Normally, I like to keep my tight end pool like pretty thin, but like you said with Ryan Griffin, that's somewhere you have to look because I mean, with all the different stacks for that game, he's probably one of the lowest owned. But I was looking at Safarian Jenkins against the Pats just from a target share standpoint and game script. I mean, McCown's going to have to throw the ball, and I mean,
yeah,
there's going to be the checkdowns in that game. Kittle, if he's healthy, interesting to me as well. But I'm looking at Jordan Reed if he's healthy at only 5,000 on DraftKings. I mean, if he's healthy, even if he's 80%, I mean, 80% of Jordan Reed is better than it ends out there. I mean, he's a stud if he's healthy. I mean, he could get hurt in the game again, but he's super interesting. And then last week, I mean, I know he's playing the Ravens now, but in Trubisky's first game, Zach Miller got 7 targets and a touchdown. So we'll see what Captain Checkdown is going to be doing there on the rollout.
Yeah, and the Ravens this year and even going back to last year, their linebackers and safeties have not been great at covering tight ends. It's been a target spot for other teams. And when you look at the weapons, there's nobody really in the passing game outside of Tariq Cohen, the backs out of the backfield and the tight ends. Zach Miller's another guy that I had circled. Nick, give me your thoughts real quick.
So my thoughts for tight end is Cameron Bright against the Arizona Cardinals. Bright in 3 straight games has scored a touchdown and over 60 yards. So just continuing the consistency trend, I would do Cameron Bright. Obviously, Travis Kelce looks like he'll be over that concussion. He'll be over that concussion in time for the game. And a lot of people will try to get him in their lineups, which I think is a smooth move by them. And then a couple other guys. I'm still high on Evan Ingram. He's playing the Denver Broncos on the road. Eli Manning has no one to really throw to. I mean, Roger Lewis. That's all I got to say. Evan Ingram should be a factor this week in the game against Denver if the Giants are even want to have a remotely close chance in winning.
All right, let's move on. Every time we talk about kicker, we all go, what? Who are we going to say? So we'll just skip kicker. And, if you can fit him in your lineup, go with the high-scoring guys. If you think, who knows? I took Butker last week just because it was the night game and I wanted something, he was cheap. And I'm going, I think it'll be rather high-scoring. And he ended up scoring 20-some points for me. So, I got lucky, but whatever. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Let's go to defense.
Always check the weather. Always check the weather with kickers.
Or go dome if you can. Get a kicker inside, and then you don't worry about that stuff. But defenses, there are 3 defenses I have circled. If you can fit Denver in your lineup, you take Denver. The Giants, I don't know how they're going to put up points in this game with the pass rush they have. I mean, it's a perfect example. It's a trifecta. You've got Denver coming off of a bye. The game plan's going to be there. You've got the Giants who just lost all their wide receivers and their offensive line sucks. And then on top of it, you've got cornerbacks that, who are you going to throw the football to? These cornerbacks can cover everybody. It's probably the best triumvirate of quarterbacks in the league. So if I can fit Denver, I'm going to. I also love Atlanta this week. Again, coming off the bye against a quarterback that's prone to turning the ball over, an offense that's looked hideous, a pass rush indoors against an offensive line that hasn't been able to block. I think that's a perfect spot for them. And the other one, if you're trying to go a little cheaper, I love the Ravens against the Bears. The Ravens historically have eaten up rookie quarterbacks. They've never lost at home to a rookie quarterback, and I know that doesn't necessarily apply to the defense, but trust me, they're going to get after it. They're going to make some plays. Trubisky is going to be miserable come Sunday. Those are the 3 defenses I have circled. It doesn't mean there are other ones out there, but give me your thoughts, Nick. Where are you looking defense?
Obviously, I think we're going to look Houston Texans way. Even though J.J. Watt's not there anymore, the Texans' defense is proven that they can still be effective without J.J. Watt. And I think that's going to be a defense that could hopefully go a little bit more on their own besides, the Broncos. If you're looking more of a pivot, I think the people are going to be a lot on the Falcons as well because of Jay Cutler and his inconsistencies. And Atlanta is obviously a huge favorite at home. If you're betting, I'm not sure if you want to bet that line. Right now, I see it at 13.5. It's a lot. So I mean, those guys the Falcons. And I agree with you on the Ravens. So the Ravens, Falcons, and Texans. I think I'll probably go a little bit more Texans, just because I think Watson will be able to get a big lead on Cleveland. So that means it's all systems go for that Texans defense.
Sean, give me your thoughts. Defenses.
I mean, yeah, the Texans still could do things. I mean, but without Watt and Merciless, I mean, it's going to be a little tougher, but they can still get to the quarterback. I mean, hunt a little while to get free, even without those two guys there against the Texans. But I guess since all three of us are on the Ravens, I mean, I guess go with the Ravens.
Go with the Ravens.
I mean, play. It's a smart, safe play, and it'll save you a little bit of money if you're trying to figure out your lineup. All right, well, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts, Sean? Anything you thought you missed or must play for you?
The Jacksonville defense as well. I mean, just the upside there. I mean, they had one horrendous game against the Titans, but other than that, they've just been killing. And yeah, I don't think we really missed anything else I can think of.
Nick, you?
I think there was one guy receiver I missed, and that was Deshaun Jackson. I think he could get loose against this Arizona Cardinals defense. And obviously their potential will probably be more on Mike Evans, but I think Deshaun Jackson can literally get loose from the slot. Last week he literally he had his coming out party, 5 catches, 106 yards. So I think he could get that again. I think get at least 80 yards and a touchdown against the Cardinals, while Mike Evans is being locked up by Patrick Peterson. So I think that's the one guy I missed, and that's one guy I'm really thinking about putting in more on my lineups in this week.
Yeah, I'm going to try to fit in as much Drew Brees as I can. That's probably who I'll be highest owned, and then decide if I'm going to go with him or Deshaun Watson based upon roster construction. But I'm going to have a handful of GPPs just loaded with Drew Brees. I think he has a huge week this week, but that's my opinion. All right, guys. Thank you so much for filling in, doing it this week. I look forward to it. We'll see who's on the pod next week. I know Justin will be back, and I'll be starting my NBA podcast on Tuesday. I'll probably be doing that solo every once in a while. Justin will fill in, so definitely if you get a chance to check that out. I've been killing the preseason. So, Nick, Sean, thank you, and we'll be back next week.
All right. See you, buddy, people.